And I think the one person that deserves the most blame for this down year at Alabama, it's Nick Saban. It's Nick Saban because he overlooked the two most important aspects, or two most important positions, if you will, in college football: quarterback and coaching. This season, he overlooked both, and right now, both are biting him in the butt big time. Both are the reasons why Alabama's 1-1 and are not a serious playoff contender, even going into the season, let alone now coming out of, so far, week number 2. You look right now at the news coming out of Tuscaloosa on Friday, and that's that Jalen Milroe is getting benched, and it's going to be Tyler Buchner now being the starter for the Tide against South Florida. Shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Shouldn't come as a shock. Right now, the 2 games in, Milroe can't hold on to the job and now has to be replaced. You know why it's not a surprise? You know why at least I'm not shocked by this news? Because Nick Saban basically told you this was coming way back in April. He telegraphed this move. Because in April, after the spring game was complete, what did Nick Saban do? He dove back into the transfer portal. He had 15 spring practices to see what Jalen Milroe could be as a starter, what Ty Simpson could be as a starter. And you know what he said? Oh boy, we're in trouble. No Bryce Young on this team. No Tua Tagovailoa throwing the ball this year for Alabama. No Mac Jones coming in to sling it left and right. We got nothing. We need help. And that's why I went into the transfer portal and got Tyler Buchner out of Notre Dame. Got him late. He went late because he realized I got nothing. And that's where Nick Saban deserves the blame. He should have recognized his problem earlier. He should have realized coming off of last season, going into this season, they needed a quarterback upgrade. Look how last year went for Alabama. They were 11-2, which again, I know is great for 99% of college football programs. But at Alabama, it is truly championship or bust. Bare minimum, college football playoff or bust. Alabama with a 10-2 regular season didn't win the SEC West. Obviously didn't make the college football playoff. But a large part of why they were 10-2 and not worse. Forget about almost beating Tennessee and almost beating LSU. They are lucky their record was not worse because of one man, Bryce Young. Bryce Young on offense, and we'll even say Will Anderson Jr. on defense. But especially offensively, it was Bryce Young, it was Jahmyr Gibbs, and nobody else. No one else. No one else stepped up in the run game. No one else was reliable on the offensive line. No receiver separated themselves to be a dynamic force to take over a game. It was really the Bryce Young show. All the pressure was put on Young's shoulders to lead this offense to success. And his credit, he did it. He did it for most of that season. But now when he went first overall in the NFL draft, Saban should have realized, well, we don't have right now much of a run game, especially when Jahmyr Gibbs is also drafted in the first round. So you lose a first-round running back, don't replace him with anyone near his talent. You don't have any receivers either on your roster or in the transfer portal that you could bring in to be that alpha dog number 1 receiver that we've seen Alabama have for years now with Jerry Jeudy, with Devontae Smith, with Jameson Williams and John Mechie. No one right now on this roster, receiver-wise, at that level of excellence. And quarterback, especially you take a massive drop off. You have the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft, and now you are replacing him in an offense that was Bryce Young reliant and Bryce Young dependent last year to win 11 games. You replace him, I should say, with a combination of Jalen Milroe, Ty Simpson, and eventually Tyler Buchner. Saban should have known better. He's no dummy. He's not losing his fastball. This one he missed, though. This offseason he missed. He should have taken the quarterback position seriously, and not even seriously, he should have recognized what he had, or really what he didn't have, sooner. Because let me just tell you the quarterbacks he could have had this offseason, which I think would have drastically changed Alabama's trajectory in 2023. He could have had Sam Hartman in the transfer portal, left Wake Forest, right now at Notre Dame. Look at Notre Dame. I'll be honest. I was not a big Notre Dame believer this season. Sam Hartman has come in now and so far through 3 games really elevated that offense, has plugged a position where Notre Dame for a long time has struggled to get a legitimate game-changing quarterback. He has filled that void. And now going into next week's massive slate, but Notre Dame's massive game at home against Ohio State, I think the Irish are winning, in large part because Sam Hartman. Imagine he was at Alabama right now. I think that Texas game would have gone a lot differently. DJ Uiagalelei, which I get had a little bit of a stink on him coming from Clemson with how bad that offense was in 2 years with him as a starter. But look at him now at Oregon State. He has an offensive line to protect for him, good run game, solid receivers. Guys look like a totally different quarterback. He is looking like the 5-star recruit he was coming out of high school. He could have been Alabama's quarterback this year. Devin Leary, solid North Carolina State starter, solid player. Could add him. Now he's in your conference at Kentucky. Brennan Armstrong, again, solid guy, solid arm, especially coming out of Virginia. You could add him. Now he's at NC State. Tanner Mordecai, coming out of SMU, more of an air raid kind of thrower, but still a good thrower of the football. Could add him. He's at Wisconsin. Spencer Sanders, 10-year starter, felt like at Oklahoma State, won a lot of games, super experienced, a veteran presence that I know Nick Saban does value. Could add him. He went to Ole Miss to be a backup to Jackson Dart. Those are the names. Any one of those names, Saban could have went into the portal and grabbed, and I think would have put Alabama in a way different position this season than where they are right now. But instead, he waited too long. Either waited too long or believed too much in what he had, and now is left basically holding nothing. That, if you want to call it patience, misguidedness, just flat out swing and miss on the quarterback position is a large part right now why Alabama lost to Texas last week. And why I think they're going to be like a 9-3, 8-4 team. Where you still have LSU, Ole Miss on the schedule. You get some tough games still. Not out of the woods whatsoever. Even Auburn, I think, is going to be a tricky game at the end of the season. One of the biggest reasons right now because Alabama and why I was not a believer in Alabama in the preseason coming into this season, and hopefully you listened last week. A lot of Alabama fans called last week. Told you Texas was going to win. Very quiet so far this week. But the reason why I was so high on Texas was because you see this quarterback position and you see the deficiency Alabama's had. It's been a very long time. Really since probably 2015 with Jacob Coker at quarterback that Alabama's been this bad at the most important position. But unlike that Coker-led 2015 team that won a national title, this year's Alabama team is not good enough at receiver, offensive line, running back, and defense to make up for a less talented quarterback. That 2015 team was loaded, and they carried the quarterback. This year's team is not. They need the quarterback to carry them like Bryce Young carried them last year. And that is where Saban has missed. He does not have a quarterback on this roster who can carry this team the way they need to be carried. That, to me, is a big miss on Nick Saban and why he deserves the most blame. Now, I'm not putting it all on Saban. And again, this blame is for just this season. Not saying he should be fired, not saying the loss is fastball, or not even saying that Alabama won't win another national title. I'm not ready to go there yet. This season only, is a failure, and it starts with Saban. But it's also on the coaching staff. It's also on the coaching staff for failing to develop. That's one of the things Alabama's done so well throughout the Bama dynasty. It's not only getting talented kids to come to your school, but it's developing them. It's getting the most out of them. You look at Alabama's recruiting rankings the last few years, they are not this bad team this year. And again, bad, I put in air quotes for Alabama standards, where they're going to be 9-3, 8-4. They're not bad because they have poor talent. Alabama has either been first or second in the recruiting rankings each of the last 5 years. It's not a talent deficiency as to why they lost to Texas last week. It's the development. They're getting the 4- and 5-star guys to Tuscaloosa at the same rate, if not higher, than they were a decade ago. The difference this year, and even really last year too, is the lack of development. The lack of turning that 5-star offensive lineman into a stalwart. The lack of turning talented skill players into being game wreckers on Saturdays. The coaching staff, I think, has dropped the ball. They have absolutely dropped the ball this season, especially in terms of getting the most out of their talent. Look, Saban has done a great job, right, at not only recruiting but also hiring. Look, he's hired guys like Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian, Brian Daboll, really before Brian Daboll was a big name when we saw him do it with the Bills. Mike Locksley. You had Kirby Smart on your staff for a while, right? Nick Saban has made a ton of home run hires. Now, I'm not going to sit here on September 16th, 2 games into a season, and tell you Tommy Rees, as offensive coordinator, sucks. Kevin Steele, back now with Alabama as his second stint as defensive coordinator, has lost his fastball. But overall, as a collective staff, they have not gotten this talent where it has to be. They have not gotten the most out of this roster last year and this year. Last year, Bryce Young made up for a lot. He covered up and was really the great eraser for a lot of flaws this team had. This year, they don't have an eraser. They are writing in pen, and when you make a mistake, it can't be corrected. And we are seeing that right now. Alabama last week could not block on the offensive line, could not run the ball, could not get pressure on Quinn Ewers. It's not just the quarterback that's the problem. It's other positions as well not making plays. Not stepping up, not being forces where we're used to seeing this team be dominant in other aspects of the game in previous years. But the lack of development from the coaching staff, I think, is equally a part of why Alabama right now is sitting at 1-1, sitting in the country ranked 10th, and it feels like the world has fallen. Development and quarterback. 2 of the biggest areas of either success or failure in college football. And right now, I think Nick Saban this season has missed on both. But especially quarterback. Quarterback is on him. And that's why for me, when you look at Alabama right now with how down I am on them, why they lost last week for the first time since 2007 in terms of losing a non-conference game, losing at home by double digits for the first time since 2003. A lot of firsts were made last week in their loss to Texas. A lot of negative firsts. I think Nick Saban deserves the most blame. For this year, he is the biggest reason why Alabama right now lost last week to Texas. Right now is making a quarterback change going into game 3 of the season. And right now does not have a lot of faith and a lot of positivity moving forward.